Hi, so I'm here with Catherine Bronger, who is one of the women who really most personifies the message that we are wanting to bring across in the Activated Probiotics Women in the New World Symposium. You know, we always talk about this symposium being for women who are passionate about the intersection of health, business, and research, and that pretty much sums up Catherine. Welcome, Catherine.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
So Catherine she's an absolute superstar pharmacist, but she's so much more than that. Catherine comes from a really significant family history in the world of pharmacy. She's a real mover and shaker herself in the world of pharmacy, and she's also a mum to 3 small kids. And she has great big plans for pharmacy and women in pharmacy in particular. Catherine, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your experience growing up in a really significant pharmacy family in New South Wales?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So all I've known is pharmacy. I always say I grew up under the dispensary because my parents are both pharmacists, and we had a small pharmacy out in the western suburbs of Sydney for a long time. And slowly those businesses grew. I can remember working one Christmas with my brothers and sisters. We had to open up the shop, and I was there with my family running that business as well. So I certainly know what it means to get a small business up and running from scratch. That grew, those businesses grew. My mother actually, who's very involved in women in pharmacy, set up pharmacy business schools as she developed and went through and did her MBA at both Sydney University and Newcastle University later on in her career. And my father was the president of the Pharmacy Guild of Australia for 13 years. And so all of our holidays was a matter of seeing different pharmacies, whether throughout Australia or throughout the world. And what it's given me is the ability to have a network within the industry that's probably beyond my years and that crosses many different generations. And so then I've been very privileged in my career to come in as a pharmacist. I didn't want to be a pharmacy. I did everything that I could possibly.
Did you actually have a choice in this? Did you ever consider anything that wasn't pharmacy, or was it just your destiny?
I mean, this is what we did. We worked in the pharmacies, growing up throughout high school. I mean, anybody, and I'm sure the audience knows what it's like to run small businesses. You live and breathe them. And so we grew up in that family. I've got 4 brothers and sisters. I was the youngest one. Everybody refused to do pharmacy. And it got to the end of
on your shoulders by the time you were ready to choose. It was all up to you.
Absolutely. Got to the end of year 12. I'd refused to do biology, even though I was very good at biology, because it was a prerequisite to get into pharmacy. And then when the results were coming out, it looked like I'd get enough marks to get in. And so my dad said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, look, I really want to do HR. I want to work with people. That was my big passion. And so I want to do business and I want to work with people. And he said to me, well, why would you do that in a big corporate? You do that for yourself. You own your business. You end up training, developing and recruiting people. That is the core part of what we do, is that human side of it. And so I said, well, listen, if I get the marks, I'll try it for the first year. I made him sign a contract that meant that I could get out. I still got that contract. But then I loved it. I got involved in pharmacy. I was always loved science. And then I ended up being involved in the student association. I headed up the student association. I was vice president of the National Student Association as well. We developed business plans. This student association had been dismantled for a period. They had a big party 10 years before we got in. We rebuilt it, got some funding, went through to all the wholesalers and the suppliers, got some funding for this student organisation for 3 to 5 years. And now it does really well in terms of getting all the young pharmacist issues across the line to the decision makers as well, which is good. Yeah. In terms of my career, I helped set up some pharmacy schools at UTS. So I sat on advisory boards for that. I sit on the advisory board for API in the Priceline. I also got involved in the Guild probably about 4 years ago, went straight from the state to the national board and helped negotiate the last agreement. And I now sit as Vice President on the Pharmacy Guild of Australia. And I head up their Scope of Practice subcommittee at the moment. So one of the areas that we want to really push pharmacy through is we've just spent these 2 years in a pandemic, but I think pharmacy more than any other primary healthcare has shown that we keep our doors open and we can assist the government in preventative care. So it's where we go from there.
So yeah, not a quiet life just sitting at home then, Catherine. No.
Oh no, I had 3 kids in between. So I
don't know how you do it. I mean, you must hear that all the time. How do you actually do your life? I mean, it's phenomenal, everything that you do. And you have 3 kids and you're working to change the world. It's pretty amazing, which is why you're coming to speak to all of our amazing community about being a businesswoman, caring for other people, being a mum, doing all of this in a world that hasn't always been super considerate of younger women. And that kind of leads on to the topic you'll be talking about at our symposium, which is why women of childbearing age make the best business partners and employees. I mean, that seems to me like a fairly provocative title, and it feels like it may have come about in response to something or someone.
No, it was absolutely a provocative question. I remember really early on in my career, I was in a round table at a university setting, and we had some great leaders in pharmacy around that room, and also small business owners that I look up to. But probably a lot of my career I've spent being a decade younger and the wrong sex in different boardrooms. And this was absolutely sort of no different at this time. And I remember we were just talking about key different issues in pharmacy. And one of the people sitting beside me said really loudly, what happens with these universities that you've got to stop is, we get students in, we get interns in, they work really, really well, and then they go off and have babies and we lose them forever. And so it's really, really hard to employ these sorts of people. And
by these sorts of people, we mean obviously women.
Well, it wasn't outly said, but absolutely, that was the intention of it. And I turned around to him straight away and said, yes, I find the men crumble under the weight of having children. But the women that I employ, I find that they've got 9 months to back themselves out of a business. They train people properly. They give them autonomy because they know they don't want to be called for at least 4 to 6 months after having that baby, to 12 months. And so they actually do have a burning platform to get the business in order. So I actually find they're terrific. And it kind of occurred to me that, that wasn't the general feeling across the board. Since then, I've had, I've gone into partnership with women of childbearing age. We've had babies at different times, and it's worked beautifully because of exactly that. Women are fabulous. We can do everything, right? But more importantly, we've got a natural ability to multitask and a natural ability to bring people with us when we lead. And I think if you can harness that, particularly from, a very early age when you're training pharmacists, then that sets them in good stead for when they come on. You train them as students, interns, managers, come on partners, and then that sets them in good stead to set up really good, healthy businesses with good culture.
And I mean, that's going to be relevant to all kinds of business, even extensive from pharmacy as well. It's so much more than about having a woman in a pharmacy. It's about the wider concept of supporting mothers and women in general and making workplaces and society more mother accepting.
Absolutely. I mean, we, like I mentioned before, I helped negotiate the last agreement, which was a huge agreement. So anyone that doesn't know, pharmacy has 5 years agreements with the government that is negotiated predominantly by the Pharmacy Guild of Australia that looks at how the PBS is distributed. So just an $18.9 billion agreement, every 5 years. Tiny little thing. And so I was part of that negotiating team, and I had a baby at the same time. And so here I was having, I think it was 184 meetings with the government over a really intense period of time, travelling with my baby to and from Canberra to have these, face-to-face meetings, and leaving my other 2 children at home, having 2 nannies, doing that sort of balance. COVID hit in the middle of it towards the end of the negotiations. Lo and behold, you can have a lot of these by Zoom. And we can put security protocols around it to allow it to happen. So I actually think that COVID has been a wonderful thing. Hard for pharmacy because we generally have to be in the store talking to patients. So you don't have that flexibility with all your staff, but certainly in other industries, that flexibility, I think, has been brilliant. And I just hope we can hold on to that moving forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because I've had a similar conversation with people around coming from the space of disability rights, for example, who had say, you know, we've spent all of our careers fighting for accessibility in business, and we were always told not possible, not possible. COVID comes along and amazing, it's possible to do things remotely. You know, who would have thought? And so it's really, you're absolutely right that COVID has kind of shaken up the status quo a little bit when it comes to who is allowed to participate in business.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting point around, you know, a breastfeeding mum of a newborn. You're no longer shut out of things automatically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's who's allowed and when you're allowed as well, because I think flexibility is that being able to work when you're able to work as well. And I think that's
yeah. Well, I can tell that we're going to have a lot to talk about at the symposium, and you will have an awful lot of wisdom to impart to our audience around, you know, being, I guess, even just being female in a male-dominated business world, which sadly is something that is still, you know, still an issue that we are still having to pipe up about. But I can't wait. I can't wait to have you on the stage there. I can't wait to hear more of your stories from the battle chambers of pharmacy, and to hear more about what you've been up to with landscaping the future, you know, the future of pharmacy as a really important healthcare movement in Australia as well. So we'll see you in Hobart.
I'm so looking forward to spending some time with like-minded women. So I look forward to that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Catherine. See you then.
Thank you. Bye.